good afternoon. We have the Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, December 17th, 2008. We have a quorum established. I'd like to remind people to please turn off their cell phones. And also, anybody who is planning on speaking before the commission today, please stand up and swear that you or affirm that you will tell the truth before the commission. Okay, great. Thank you. First order of agenda is case 0815, Southeast Legal Services, which is a Title 41. Come on up. Come on down, Dave. Paul, do you want to come up?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks. Usually when I get these, there's a dollar amount at the bottom.
Those bills.
So we are looking at final approval for your Title 41.
Hope so.
Is what we had talked last meeting. We have many letters from all the various departments and supervisors. The outstanding one, if you could talk about a little bit, Paul, would be what you've heard from the Tree Commission.
The Tree Commission, I assume you haven't received anything from them yet? Mr. Reeser went before the Tree Commission last Thursday evening. The impression I got was that a letter would be coming very soon. They had no problems with the site.
Okay.
There's no removal of trees, and I believe there's well over 500 trees on the site, so they had no problems with anything, and Mr. Ingram, or Dr. Ingram, said he would be sending out, I believe he said he'd be sending out a letter momentarily, so.
Okay. May we need to remind them.
Correct, right.
And you got your problem, the understanding about having to name the trees that we talked about on?
We do not have to name the
Okay,
trees.
great, that's good. So,
And Mr. Ingram did make a remark that, gee, wouldn't it be nice if we put a few more trees below the parking lot? So I think they should be known as the Ingram firs. And we'll plant those trees below the parking lot, as he thought would
Okay.
be nice.
well, he would love that, so, great. So, with all the other letters and your discussion with Paul, do you want to briefly outline the comments that we've gotten from the various commissions and departments?
Sure. The primary concerns relating to fire and safety, Chief Troxel wanted to make sure that they had adequate clearance on the driveway up for fire trucks and safety vehicles to get up. I believe he requested 12 feet high, and that would be from the driveways up, basically a 12-foot box. Police was comfortable with everything. They encouraged adequate lighting in the parking lot if there was going to be business taking place in the evenings, as well to discourage people from using that as a hangout spot late at night or on the weekends. I apologize, I don't have a copy of the letter with me to summarize anything else. There was a concern about the a backflow valve, making sure that that's inspected and make sure that that works properly for the sewer systems. Visible signage for 911 and Postal Service, and just orienting people that are trying to get to the site so that there's adequate information on East State Street, because it is it's hidden back there. It's
Right.
tucked behind that apartment complex.
Okay. And we have received from some RVC architects a letter acknowledging these issues and agreeing to the various issues that have been brought up by the parties. Any questions from the commission?
Just simply one. When you say visible signage, I assume you will have some kind of sign there. Besides, when visible signage means two things to me: either an address, but also you're going to have an actual sign, right?
There will be, right, identification of the property as a law office, and it'll be submitted and comply with the sign ordinance
Okay.
when we get to that point.
I know it's kind of hard to find right now. That's why I was asking.
Yeah.
What's a Knox box?
I think
I think it means a locks box.
No, I think it's a Knox box is actually, it's a trade name, and the fire department requires it of all all commercial properties in the city, and it's a place in which you put the key to your property.
Oh.
And it's accessible to the fire department, so they don't have to take an axe to your door. And it's actually a decent idea, and it was one of those items in Chief Troxell's comments.
Right.
And we actually were going to do that anyways.
Okay. Nicholas?
No, I mean, I brought up my issues before with the, I thought it was weird to have the still kind of interstitial gravel area on the driveway up. And I mean, I understand East State Street was, well, wasn't planned, but was pretty haphazardly developed. But I guess I just don't want to continue that trend. So to me, it makes more sense if you're going to have an access from East State Street to the property that should be paved the whole way. Otherwise, your pavement's just going to get all torn up between the gravel, you know, when that's plowed, between the gravel and where the concrete starts. The other issue, I think that I had, no, I think that was the only one. But, I mean, if money's an issue, I guess I understand that concern.
Money, and I think I'd like to see how it behaves. You know, frankly, you know, we do take seriously this issue of impermeability of surfaces, and when we start getting a long driveway, if, you know, a gravel driveway is going to be somewhat permeable.
Yeah.
I was a little worried about sheeting water coming off that midsection. And I think we've discussed it with the owner, and I think that the intent is down the road, if it seems feasible, for definitely to pave it.
And then, a question for the Plan Commission, can we give approval if we don't, last time we couldn't give approval because of the Tree Commission. Sounds like Tree Commission still has not given us, I mean, they've talked to them, but we haven't got anything formally from the Tree Commission. Can we give approval without, in absence of?
Well, I think we can give approval on condition that the,
yeah.
Well, we tried to do that last time, though.
that was
You
with
know.
the wellhead letter. So I would feel comfortable giving permission on condition of that letter being in place. That way we don't have to have an emergency meeting.
No, I mean, I understand, I just wasn't sure.
Paul?
I would say probably so. I mean, they've had a meeting already. It sounds
Right.
like they've worked everything out.
Okay.
And you're talking about a citizen board, and the
Yeah.
tardiness of a letter, to my mind, is no
Okay.
problem.
Okay.
And again, looking at the layout of the place, I don't know if you went up there already, I suppose.
Right, yeah. So I
It's not a
just-
question of a lack of trees, it's just placement of it and-
Yeah,
and just
right.
finishing touches. So,
I understand.
I don't- you know, if they start cutting down more trees, then it'd be a problem. But
Well, I mean, it is, you know, Paul, the Tree Commission was aware that the fire department has requested some trees to be cut or trimmed?
They were, yeah, to
Okay.
be trimmed back.
So, I mean, if they know that, it seems sufficient. Thank you.
And they looked at the plans.
Right,
And they've made their recommendation because they want 3 trees to be planted below the, so, I mean, that has been
Okay.
duly noted
That's
within
fine.
this letter, so.
okay.
Harry?
Nope, fine with me.
do you want to add anything?
No, I just, they have anything on there about the shed or the guardrail?
We
Yeah.
absolutely are going to address the shed. We're getting prices to remove it, and if it's not removed, we'll put it on a proper structural foundation. The guardrail, actually, the cars, the way the parking is configured, the cars actually don't, on the southern half of the parking area, are parallel parked. So it didn't seem like, I mean, if they were parked nose in, where they could conceivably roll down the hill, then we absolutely would do a guardrail, but it seems like they're, because of that,
I was thinking more at the end where the shed was at,
where the shed was.
that end, you know, if they're backing up, their tires drop off that thing.
John,
Thank
can you sit at one of the tables?
Yes.
there? No, that's okay.
Well, should we put just, like, it would probably take 3 parking blocks to barricade that
Yeah,
end?
parking blocks would work as well on that one end.
I don't
You know,
see that
if
that's
they
a-
back up or that first spot, if they pull forward, we've seen people do that many a time. I think they have in reverse and it's in drive and off they
We did
go.
do that.
So, it doesn't necessarily need to be a guardrail, but some sort of barrier
Yeah.
to keep them, especially if that shed's not gonna be there, to, you know, they can back up and be gone. So that would be the only,
Fine.
Okay. So you'll include that with your letter? I think that would be.
Yep.
So, any more discussion? Do we have a motion?
I move that we accept the plans as submitted for the Southeast Legal Service on 964 East State Street under the ordinance Title 41. This is case 0815.
Okay. I have a second?
I'll second.
3 seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Have fun planting those 3 trees. I think you should have David come out and help you.
Yeah. They might not be the Ingram firs, they might be the Ingram yews.
Yeah.
And so we have to check.
Okay.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. What is mine?
Agenda go? Take a look at mine.
Okay, second, next on the agenda is communications. Do we have any communications?
Do you have anything?
Do we have any communications?
No.
No, I do.
Nobody wants to communicate with us.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I did bring the information. We modified part of our code regarding the location of drinking, eating establishments back earlier this year. And I think we need to take another look at that. It's my understanding that the modification that was approved and then went to council, which they ultimately approved, removed the existing language, so it just addresses drive-through drinking or eating, not drinking and eating establishments.
And
I
my,
thought we were so careful with that.
I'm
Okay.
not careful enough, I think.
Right, okay.
So,
and my interpretation is that does cover what we're talking about,
Mhm.
essentially. That it's drive-throughs, drive-ins, drive-throughs, comma, eating and drinking establishments. Yeah. But I think that's a question that was brought up.
Okay. Well, maybe the first meeting in January, I should be put on the agenda.
Can you do
Just
that,
revisit
Sean?
it.
Okay.
Revisit.
Mhm.
And maybe you can send out before that meeting, the language to everybody. Okay? Yeah.
The only other one is the town hall meeting for
Oh, yes.
January 29th.
A reminder for people, the town hall meeting, January 29th, to review the comprehensive plan and its status. And we will be looking at indicators for the comprehensive plan that the advisory committee has been putting together and get public feedback from those. So that's the 29th, I don't know which day it is, Thursday.
The last communication is I received a letter about a week and a half ago from pastors concerning homeless shelters.
That was in the messenger this morning.
Yes, I'm aware of that. One of the discussions, of course, it branched out to is rezoning areas to make it fit for homeless shelters. And again, that would be in the purview of the planning commission.
Right.
I did have a discussion with Paul Logue about, I think at one point, hostels and other rooming houses. So it's in the works in terms of conversation. But one of the tasks I was asking for the authors of the letters was to participate. There's going to be a homeless snapshot of the homeless conditions within the city. I think they're anticipating to do that. The Housing Coalition, Athens County Housing Coalition, is talking about doing that the 27th to find out what the needs are. I'm not sure if we, again, it comes down to what fits in our code,
Right.
and that would be something that ends up in the zoning code and therefore our area.
Right.
And I just bring that up as a communication in terms of expressed concern.
Anything else? Anything from? No? Okey dokey. A report from our city planner?
Just to kind of back up on what the mayor was just talking about relating to the homeless, not having anything in zoning relating to homeless services and housing. I received, at the same time we were discussing this, I received a phone call from a gentleman in Columbus who was interested in, who inquired about how he could open up a hostel in the city of Athens. He'd done some basic marketing and was very familiar with hostel systems around the U.S. and around Europe. When I was trying to find some background for him, I realized that there's nothing in our code specifically stating where you cannot have a hostel.
Right. Does he mean like a youth hostel? sort of?
Youth
Yeah.
hostel generally, yeah. He didn't have too much as far, he was just gathering some preliminary information. He had run into the same problem in Columbus where he was looking to operate one there, open one, and the city didn't have anything on their books for it. And so essentially they just said, sorry. What I had noticed is that a lot of other cities had hostel and regulations for zoning for homeless housing as well, and they're in the same piece of code, which was separate from hotels, separate from R1s, et cetera. And so we may want to look at it from that standpoint. If there's a need, we should be looking at housing in general.
Right.
And they may come in line with each other. Just kind of a little bit more on that for
Right.
you.
Could you, before, I think maybe this could be also an agenda item of discussion further about this. Could you bring some of those examples of what you have found?
I'd be happy to, yeah.
Also, what's My Sister's Place? How is that dealt with?
I'm not sure.
I suspect it's a rooming house. Go ahead.
I mean, I don't understand, if it's not in the code, it's not prohibited then? Like, would be
Well-
my interpretation.
I think it's the other way around.
Yeah.
If it's not in the code, it
It's
is
not in the code,
prohibited.
it's-
Oh,
Code is like a permissible, these are the things that are permissible reading. So,
And again, it would fall under, probably if anything, it falls under rooming houses or hotels at that
Right.
point. And then at that point, then it would have to be licensed as such. If I understand correctly,
Right.
I'm not an expert at this either.
Yeah.
It's
And it may just be a question of rewriting, of looking at the definitions we have for
Right, right.
rooming houses, hotels, motels, et cetera.
or maybe also a definition change, yeah, looking at the definition. I would be interested as to how they deal with My Sister's Place. Because if that's defined as as a rooming house or something, how is that different than what the Timothy House wants?
Good
So if
question.
so if you can get some just basic information, maybe put a little, so,
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't a fraternity sorority be considered a rooming house?
yeah.
And I think there's
They're
a-
educational, or rooming house.
I think they're rooming houses. I think there's actually a term, fraternity houses, in there.
Yeah, okay.
I haven't looked at it lately, but I thought there was actually a definition in there for that.
Okay. Yeah, I never thought of the zoning code as being that catch-all of listing everything that that doesn't seem plausible.
Well,
Like
it
it-
usually says permitted use, principal permitted uses,
Right,
it says
right.
conditional permitted uses.
Right.
Okay, so the idea if it's there,
Right.
you're ready to go. If it's not,
Otherwise, somebody could say, there's so many things that you could get around by
Right.
saying that. So-
Well, I guess usually it's defined what are not permitted uses in a zone.
Hmm.
I mean, if you read the R1, R2, it will say you can't have a garden, or you can't have this. Usually it's defined.
Hmm.
So that's why I thought.
okay.
So, okay.
It probably needs a reread.
That's what I'm getting.
No, you're right. I haven't looked at it all lately, too. So when something like this comes up, it's, okay, is it allowed or not?
Yeah.
I think also trying to identify other areas that the homeless, that could potentially become housing for low to moderate income people. That's something the comprehensive plan specifically talks about. I know that in the Messenger article, they were saying how the comprehensive plan doesn't necessarily talk about homeless, but it does talk about a range of housing options, and that's definitely with low and moderate income, which I think is something, and so, okay. Anything else on your report?
Well, we've got the zoning map still.
You have,
Right now, we're having the law director review it to see whether council actually does need to adopt or attest to the zoning map that Ilgard has finished for us. I just sent an email to him this morning asking for something to see if he had any guidance for us yet, but I haven't received anything back. Debbie Walker talked with him about it after last week, or 2 weeks ago after the planning commission meeting, to see what he thought about it. So still waiting on word for on that.
If they, I guess the question is if the city can get in trouble if they do attest it. I mean,
Right.
is that what you're,
Well, the problem is if you, it says that the official city zoning map, I believe, if you look at, I think it's 230202 in Athens City Code, it says the official city zoning map properly attested must be held on file at the city code enforcement office. It doesn't say what properly attested means, because the map that we've done is nothing more than updating the old map. We haven't made any zoning changes. It takes into effect any annexations that the city's done and how those were zoned, and any rezonings that were done, say, back in the 90s or the 80s or anything since the last map was done. We just don't have any guidance as to what it means to be attested. Ohio Revised Code doesn't say very much either, so the law director's looking at that. He wasn't very, I don't believe he wasn't very happy with how the law was written, how the ordinance was written right now, so,
okay,
or how our code was written, excuse me.
okay.
So conceptually, really, if we sign off it, that's the very minimum that would be required, I guess. In
Could
theory,
be, yeah.
because there's no real zoning change, as you're telling us. It's a reflection of every ordinance that has come
Right,
through
right.
for annexation, rezoning it already, so.
Right, the zoning changes have already been made. We have a map that was done in the 60s or 70s, I believe, and, zoning changes that were done in the 90s aren't reflected on that map, except they're drawn on using a magic marker. So this is just officializing those changes and making it, and having it so that it's accurate for anybody who needs the information.
Okay.
So,
Someday we'll be done.
We'll be done.
Thank you.
someday, yeah.
Another question?
Questions?
Task force for the sign ordinance stuff?
Yeah, yeah.
That's still on track?
Still on track. We meet tomorrow at noon downstairs if anybody's interested in sitting in. We have been focusing on temporary signage. A request has been made to the law director relating to political signs. We're working through real estate signs right now and Court Street issues like sandwich boards and things like that so that those can be permitted, or with the potential that we can now permit sandwich boards on Court Street following specific requirements from the code office. So we are looking at that. Hopefully John will be able to make it tomorrow.
All right, yeah.
Okay.
And how's the flood regulation process going?
Relating to code,
Yeah.
I believe we are at the final stage of what we think is needed to adopt it.
Okay.
We have to get the 20 and 50-year flood mapping completed by, which I think that's scheduled to be done by the middle of March.
Okay.
So once we have that mapping done, we can then get the ordinance through council,
Okay,
or get the code through council.
great. And the letters go out to the people who had the fires?
They have, yeah. I've
And
already
have you
talked
got
with one of
any
them.
Feedback from that?
I've talked with the owners of 6040 Stimson
Yeah.
about it, and I'm working with them to help them out,
Great.
show them what they need to do and how to do it.
Was that pretty extensively damaged?
It was, yeah, I believe it's a 3-unit
Mhm.
apartment building on East Stimson. It
Yep.
was caught fire on Halloween.
Yeah.
We're not sure how much damage it was. It's probably right around the 50% line,
Mhm.
which is where we really need to check the numbers on it.
Okay. Great, thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Next on the agenda, opportunity for citizens to speak about items not covered on the agenda. Do we have anybody? Okay. Announcements and other business. Any announcements from the commission? Our next meeting is January 7th, 2009, which is 12 o'clock once again. It'll take me till March to figure out to write 2009 on it.
I know the feeling.
The minutes, we reviewed the minutes, they were fine to me. Any comments or corrections to the minutes?
I didn't see.
None.
I didn't see any.
Okay.
I move we accept the minutes of December 3rd, 2008.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Adjournment.
I move we adjourn.
Okay. Second.
What is this?
That was the...
Title